in the studio with me to be part of this show.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So you mentioned something really interesting. You and I have something in common. Tell our listeners about that.
We've both lost weight, and just about the I think the exact same
50 pounds.
Yeah. Just I've got you beat by 5, but I know you'll catch up. So, it was something that I decided to make a life change, and it was by the prompting of a physician. And it's amazing, and I'm sure you've experienced this the same way, how much better you feel in every aspect of your life, from sleep just to everyday activities. And I've got 2 young children, so it's made all the difference in the world for me.
Right. The thing that I loved about it was the relationship that it created with my closet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Suddenly
absolutely.
I liked going in there.
Yeah. Yes.
So, being in the restaurant industry, I would imagine that, was that the reason that you had put on weight?
Yeah, I'll tell you honestly, it was part of the reason. And I think just getting too complacent with not doing exercise and always finding reasons as to why you can't go to the gym versus just going. So I would say it's a combination of things. But for me, as the president and CEO of the Arizona Restaurant Association, I'm in restaurants all day. And more so, our great restaurateurs are always wanting me to try something because they're looking for that honest opinion they may not get from someone else. So if you're doing that on a regular basis, you can add those pounds quickly. But today, if I may, I would tell you that restaurants have embraced diets, because diets really aren't a fad. Diet should be a way of life. And so in the industry, if we are not meeting the needs of our consumers, we're going to be out of business. So you'll see many restaurants, and I'll name one if I can, Seasons 52, where there's nothing over 500 calories on their menu. Now, you can choose to add items that will quickly add those calories up, but it's geared to make sure what we started the show with, and that you're not overeating, and that you're eating just as much as you need. And I think that's a key factor. Something we've done in the industry as well is portion control. We've reduced portions, and if folks want to take that home with them, whatever's left over, they're more than happy to do so. So I will tell you, through every segment of the industry, from the quick serve industry all the way up to fine dining, you will find something on a menu in Arizona that meets your dietary constraints.
Now, let's talk about the restaurant industry. And actually, let's talk about the Arizona Restaurant Association and what role that plays. What does the Restaurant Association do?
The Arizona Restaurant Association's been around since 1939. In fact, we're just blocks away from our office in the hub here of Scottsdale. And we look out for the best interests of our members, restaurateurs. We care about one thing: restaurants and thereby their success. So what our primary function is, we have to educate our restaurateurs, meaning the staff, as to how to safely handle food and effectively cooking temperatures along. All those things are required by the industry. So there's an education arm. There's a collaboration arm as well, whereby I'm sure you've heard of Arizona Restaurant Week. We introduced 2 now a year. That was something authored by the Arizona Restaurant Association and actually trademarked. It's become so successful. So we are driving consumers to restaurants. We're trying to increase their profitability and their entrepreneurship. So there's that business component. And then lastly is advocacy. We have been instrumental in making sure that we keep government out of the lives of our restaurateurs and all associated industries. For example, last year we ran a bill in the state legislature that said you cannot do what California's doing in saying you ban toys in kids' meals. That's really a decision that should be left up to parents and grandparents, not the federal government, not the city, not a county. So that would be an example of what we do in an advocacy way.
So what are some of the challenges over the years that you've heard the restaurants are having?
Well, I'll first say that we've been very blessed to experience positive growth. Even during the most tumultuous times of Arizona's economy, we still had a positive growth in the state. Some have a hard time connecting the dots because we also lost about 500 restaurants in the state shortly after 2007 and through about 2010. But we're seeing them come back, and what's amazing to people, especially elected officials, is in Arizona, restaurants this year in 2012 will post sales of nearly $10 billion, employing 250,000 people. So we are the backbone from a small business standpoint of every community. But that being said, we have multiple issues. I will say that regulations, we're one of the most heavily regulated industries there is. And having to fight those off, whether it be a health department or a tax agency, whatever the case might be, it's always a challenge for the restaurant industry. But secondly, you have to make sure that your food costs are always aligned. Commodity prices fluctuating all over the board, corn, for example, because it has so many uses now, can really hurt restaurants' profitability and whatnot. So I will tell you that in Arizona, we're lucky because we're known as a test market, and so we're constantly in that state of flux and always growing. But if you are not focused on cutting those costs or making sure your costs are correct and that your labor costs are correct, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble.
And I think that, for any small business, I think that's something that they can understand and appreciate. Now, you mentioned that the restaurant industry is the most heavily regulated. Is that something that you think needs to change, or do you think that those regulations are in place for a reason?
I think it's always a primary concern of any restaurateur that if they are not serving food in a safe and healthy manner, they've got the most to lose. People often joke that, you just want to do it with the health department. Look, restaurants have the most to lose. If you go into a restaurant and you have food poisoning, not only are you not going to go back to that restaurant, you're probably going to tell your friends not to go. And there have been restaurants, Chi-Chi's, for example, have gone out of business because of issues or health scares. So I would tell you, it's not necessarily overregulation by what most would expect, the health industry, meaning doing health inspections and whatnot. It's really the small little things. It's the permitting fees. It's the taxes. It's the sales tax increases. It's all those little hidden things that in and of themselves don't seem like much. But boy, when you start to add them up, it's crippling. Obamacare is really going to hurt our industry. So collectively, when you add them all up, it makes us one of the most regulated industries there is.
Do you think that, clearly it sounds like there's been a lot of success and there's continued success. Do you think SB 1070 has any potential to hurt or help the restaurant industry?
Well, I think the sad thing about 1070 was the boycotts that were called out. We actually, as an organization, did not speak out against 1070. What we said was 1070 is a good example to the federal government to wake up and act, which they did not. Right. And then what ensued after that, sadly, were some of our own elected officials, and one in particular calling for boycotts of our own state, which did hurt from a tourism standpoint. Without question, it hurt. We had canceled conferences, and I will tell you, restaurants were not as impacted as badly as others because we're more of a byproduct. We're kind of down the food chain, no pun intended. But when you come to have a conference here, the hotel is going to benefit substantially. And then when diners go out or when those guests go out to eat, that would impact us. So 1070 did, I think, hurt, not because of the law itself, but because of the aftermath of what people were doing to our state by calling it for boycotts, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, recently I was in a restaurant, and I'm not going to promote or advertise for them because they were doing it poorly. I'm talking about social media, and I'm not. Sure. I'm never going to profess to say I know how restaurants should be running the restaurants. I don't even cook. My kids are lucky that they're alive because I'm not a cook. But I'm sitting in this restaurant and I see on the back of their menu that they have these social media icons. So I know that they're using social media. And when the server came over, I asked her, are you doing any incentive for people checking in or anything like that? Are you doing anything that is encouraging me to notify all of my friends that I'm here? She blank stare looked at me. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't even know that we were on Facebook. So right. It kind of made me crazy. And I understand I'm a social media geek and I get that. But how is it that restaurants are successfully using social media, in your opinion? And how is it that they're missing the boat? Well,
to your point, I cannot cook either. I think it's good to confess. And I only lasted 2 days as a busboy. So there's a reason why I'm on this side of the industry, not working in the kitchen. But I will tell you, myself and my staff all work once a year in a restaurant. For 1 day, because that's the best way. And Restaurant Week is coming up, and we're all going to do it again. And it's important to learn those fundamentals. To your point, though, I will tell you, when I started 10 years ago as the CEO of the association, 15% of our members were on email. So if you look at that to compare to today, we're in the era of Facebook and texting and hash marks and all the other things you just mentioned. Boy, we've come a long way. However, I will tell you, we have some education to do to our members as well that we've found, and we conduct that on a regular basis, at least twice a year, and we're going to start to try and do that more, because they might have that Facebook icon or they might have a Facebook site, but they're not ever paying attention to it. Facebook for Restaurant Week, for example, is a huge way of communicating with foodies, as we call them. But I think what you'll see, Christina, is you'll see from one extreme to the other. You'll see restaurants that are kind of going through the motions to make sure that they're in the new century, participating in a social media aspect, and then you'll see at the other end of that spectrum, restaurants just harnessing the power of social media in every aspect of what they do, from daily specials to what they're promoting on new menu items or whatever giveaways they might be doing, or kids eat free. So it's across the board, but I see our trend going to more not just embracing social media by having it, but actively participating and getting their staffs involved. Yep, so
that's smart.
I hope that's just a one-time encounter for you.
Okay, so you've been with the association for 10 years. Restaurant Week, I love it. It gives me a great opportunity to get out and try a lot of different restaurants. So clearly, you've had a lot of success there. Why politics? Why are you transitioning?
Well, part of it is too that I love an industry I knew nothing about. I completely fell in love with. Restaurateurs are some of the most entrepreneurial people you'll ever meet, and I joke they light their hair on fire every day. But what I want to do is, we were able to make some great things happen at the Arizona Restaurant Association economically for it and making the success happen. I want to do that for my community. And fortunately for county supervisors, it's a part-time by statute. And so you can do both. You can have a day job, which every supervisor does. And so my goal would be to try and apply those business principles to county government. And how much better can we make county government by just doing something as simple as that? We're embarking on a strategic plan for the Arizona Restaurant Association in 2013. I want to bring a strategic plan to county government.
All right, we're going to learn more about what those plans look like, and we're going to learn more about just what a county supervisor does when we get back from our break. You are listening to The Social View. If you're commenting, posting, or liking it, we're talking about it here or on our page, The Social View, on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll be back in 2 minutes.